The wind howled across the frozen cliffs of the ice planet, cutting through the thick layers of Kale's jacket. Snow swirled around him, stinging his face, and the bitter cold made his fingers numb. He had been repairing a broken power generator for hours, the kind of job that most colonists avoided in the middle of a storm. Kale didn't mind the cold. He had grown up on harsh planets, learning early that survival meant moving forward, no matter how cruel the world seemed. As he hammered the last support beam into place, a faint, pitiful sound reached his ears. At first, he thought it was the wind, whistling through the cliffs, but then he heard it again, soft, desperate cries that made his chest tighten. Kale froze, straining to listen. The sound was small, almost drowned by the roar of the storm, but it was real. Someone, or something, was calling for help. He scanned the white landscape, eyes squinting against the blinding snow. There, near a jagged cliff edge, he saw it. A tiny creature, no bigger than a human child, huddled against the ice. Its scales were frosted over, and a wing hung awkwardly to its side. Kale's heart sank. The creature was trembling violently, its tiny body shaking with cold and pain. He had never seen anything like it before. Its head, triangular and smooth, lifted slightly as it saw him, and he caught the faintest glimmer of golden eyes, wide with fear. Kale didn't hesitate. He grabbed his thermal blanket from his pack and sprinted toward the creature. Snow cut into his face and legs, but he ignored the pain. Every step closer, he saw more of the injuries, shallow cuts along its legs, tiny burns across its scales, and a faint trickle of blood staining the ice. Whoever had hurt this little being had not been gentle. Kale felt a surge of anger, but also an overwhelming need to help. No one deserved this kind of suffering. When he finally reached the dragon baby, it recoiled, letting out a tiny hiss. Kale spoke softly, moving slowly so as not to frighten it more. "It's okay. I won't hurt you," he whispered, wrapping the creature in the thermal blanket. The baby pressed into the warmth, its body trembling less but still shivering violently. Kale could feel the tiny heart beating against his palm, weak and irregular, and he knew it wouldn't survive long if he left it there. Carefully, he lifted it into his arms. The dragon baby's wings flopped helplessly, and its head lolled against his chest. Kale adjusted the blanket around it, shielding it from the cold wind. The storm was growing stronger, and the ice under his boots was slick and uneven. Each step was dangerous, but he kept moving, telling himself it didn't matter. He had to save it. The dragon made a small, pitiful sound, a soft whimper that seemed almost human. Kale's chest ached at the sound. He had rescued animals before, even rare alien species, but this little creature was different. It had eyes that looked almost intelligent. There was a spark there, a hint that it understood fear and trust, even in its fragile state. Kale whispered to it all the way back to his outpost, telling it would be safe soon, that he wouldn't let anything happen to it. The journey was slow. Snow blew across his face and stung his eyes. The jagged cliffs threatened to throw him off balance at every step. Kale slipped once, catching himself with one hand while holding the baby with the other. His legs burned with effort, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the storm seemed endless, stretching farther than the eye could see. Yet, every time he looked down at the dragon, he felt a strange warmth, hope that maybe they could both make it. When he finally reached the small outpost, his breath came in short, ragged gasps. He set the dragon down gently on a pile of warm blankets. The creature looked up at him, eyes wide, and let out a tiny, relieved squeak. Kale's hands were frozen and his body exhausted, but he smiled. He had saved it from the frozen wilderness, at least for now. As he worked to make a safe space for it near the small heat source, Kale noticed how fragile the creature was. Its scales were thin in some places, its wings bent awkwardly, and the tips of its ears were bright red from frostbite. He made a vow then, silently, that he would not let it die. He didn't know where it had come from, or if its parents were nearby, but he knew one thing: he had found a life that needed him, and he was going to fight for it. Outside, the storm raged on, white and relentless. Inside, a small fire flickered, casting warm light over Kale and the dragon baby. For the first time that day, the creature seemed calm. It rested its head against his arm, tiny eyes half closed, trusting the human who had dared to reach through the storm. Kale knew this was just the beginning. The ice planet would not be forgiving, and neither would the dangers ahead, but for now, they had survived together. And sometimes, that was enough. Kale could feel the dragon baby's tiny body trembling against his chest as he prepared to move it to a safer place. The outpost was small, built with metal panels and reinforced glass, but it was warm and had the supplies he needed to help the creature heal. Still, Kale knew the real danger was outside. The ice planet was merciless, and predators roamed these frozen plains, always hunting for weak or injured prey. He bundled the dragon baby carefully in a thick thermal blanket, making sure its wings were protected. Its golden eyes peeked out, watching him closely, full of trust but also fear. Kale whispered softly to it, "We're going to be okay. I won't let anyone hurt you." The baby let out a faint squeak and pressed closer to him. That small sound, fragile but alive, filled Kale with determination. Stepping outside, he felt the wind blast against him like a solid wall. Snow stung his face and whipped against his eyes, making it hard to see. Every step was a struggle. The ice under his boots was slick, and the cliffs around him were jagged and dangerous. Kale gritted his teeth and pushed forward, gripping the dragon baby tightly. He had done dangerous things before, but this felt different. The life in his arms was delicate, and he knew one wrong step could mean the end. Suddenly, a low growl echoed from the distance. Kale froze. His heart pounded in his chest. The sound came again, closer this time, and he could see a dark shape moving through the snow. A predator, taller than a human, with long claws and a jagged snout, was hunting in the storm. Its eyes glowed with cold intelligence, and it had already spotted the dragon baby. Kale didn't panic. He remembered all the lessons he had learned growing up on dangerous worlds. He slowed his pace, looking for higher ground, for something to give him an advantage. The predator snarled and charged, snow flying in its wake. Kale dodged to the side, sliding on the ice, but the dragon baby shifted in his arms, frightened. He pressed it tightly against his chest and ran. The predator lunged again, claws scraping against the ice, but Kale noticed a ridge above the frozen ground. He scrambled up, keeping his balance and moving as quickly as the storm allowed. The creature followed, but it was less agile in the deep snow. Kale used his knowledge of the terrain, slipping and sliding purposefully, drawing the predator into a trap. With a final leap, he landed behind a jagged ice outcropping. The predator skidded past, unable to turn quickly, and Kale didn't waste a second. He ran toward his outpost, the dragon baby safe for now, but his muscles burning with effort. Hours seemed to pass as he struggled against the storm. Kale's boots were soaked, his jacket frozen stiff, and his fingers numb, but he refused to stop. Every step, every painful movement, was worth it. The dragon baby had trusted him, and he would not let it down. Finally, the small outpost came into view, its warm lights a beacon in the endless white. Relief washed over Kale, but he knew the danger wasn't over yet. Inside, he laid the dragon baby gently on a pile of thick blankets. Its breathing was shallow, but it was alive. Kale quickly started warming it with portable heaters and carefully checked its injuries. The small cuts and burns were minor compared to the cold damage. Still, he treated each one carefully, cleaning the wounds and applying alien salves he had kept for emergencies. The dragon baby watched him intently, its golden eyes tracking every movement. Kale smiled faintly. "You're tougher than you look," he said softly, though his own exhaustion made him ache. Even as he worked, Kale's mind raced. He had no idea where the dragon baby had come from. Ice planets weren't known for wildlife this size, and the species was likely rare, maybe even endangered. He didn't care about that now. The important thing was that it needed him, and he would do whatever it took to help it survive. The hours passed slowly, but the baby's breathing grew steadier. It finally curled up on the blankets, wings folding awkwardly but protected. Kale allowed himself a small sigh of relief. Outside, the storm still raged, a constant reminder that the world beyond the outpost was unforgiving. But inside, there was warmth, safety, and hope. For now, that was enough. Kale looked down at the dragon baby and noticed something remarkable. Tiny sparks of fire flickered from its nostrils when it breathed, a faint glow that danced like embers. Kale's eyes widened. The creature wasn't just alive, it was extraordinary. He had held dangerous predators at bay, fought against the storm, and yet it still breathed, still survived, still trusted him. A thought struck him then: if he could protect this creature, maybe it could teach him something too. Maybe together, they could survive more than just the storm. Maybe, in a world so cold and empty, two lives could find warmth in each other. Kale didn't know what challenges lay ahead. He didn't know if the colony would accept the dragon or if the planet would throw more dangers at them. All he knew was that he had made a choice, to save a life when no one else would, and that choice had already changed him. As the storm roared outside, Kale wrapped the dragon baby tighter in the blankets, feeling its small body press against his chest. The golden eyes blinked slowly, a tiny spark of trust and gratitude shining in them. For the first time that day, Kale allowed himself to hope. Together, they might survive. Together, they might even thrive. And that thought gave him the courage to face whatever the frozen world would throw at them next. Kale sat near the small heat source, the dragon baby curled up on the blankets in front of him. Its body was tiny, fragile, and trembling occasionally, but at least it was alive. Kale's hands were still stiff from the cold outside, but he carefully examined the creature's wounds. The small cuts along its legs were healing slowly, and the burns on its wings were raw but not deep. He had no idea what kind of species it was. Its golden eyes watched him with a strange intelligence, almost as if it understood every word he spoke. Kale couldn't help but talk to it. "You're safe now," he said softly, adjusting the blankets around its wings. "I'll keep you warm. No one will hurt you here." The dragon baby let out a small squeak, almost like it understood him. Kale smiled faintly. For the first few hours, the creature didn't move much. It stayed huddled, breathing slowly, its little chest rising and falling. Kale knew it needed rest, but he also knew that alone in the storm, it would never have survived this long. He carefully prepared a small dish of warm nutrient paste he had carried for emergencies. The dragon sniffed it cautiously before licking it slowly, making soft, happy sounds. Kale felt a rush of relief. It was eating, and that meant it was growing stronger. As the day passed, Kale continued to tend to it. He made small splints for its wings using metal strips and soft padding from old blankets. He massaged its legs carefully, encouraging blood flow. The dragon baby slowly began to respond, its movements growing stronger and more confident. At first, it barely lifted its head, but soon it was nudging Kale's hands, exploring him gently with its snout. Kale laughed quietly, feeling a strange warmth in his chest. "You're not just any creature," he said, stroking its head. "You're something special." The dragon blinked at him, golden eyes shining, and curled closer. Kale realized something remarkable: the creature was starting to trust him completely. It wasn't just surviving, its personality was beginning to show. Tiny sparks of fire flickered from its nostrils when it breathed, faint but real. Kale's eyes widened in awe. He had never seen anything like it. Even as the dragon grew stronger, Kale faced challenges. Supplies were low, and the storm outside continued without mercy. Every trip to gather ice melt or nutrient supplies was dangerous, and the colony was not welcoming of outsiders bringing strange creatures into the outpost. Kale had to work quietly, hiding his new companion from skeptical colonists. Yet every risk he took felt worth it, because he knew the dragon baby's life depended on him. At night, he would sit near the fire, watching it sleep. Its breathing had become steadier, and it sometimes twitched its tiny wings in its sleep, as if dreaming. Kale talked to it even then, telling stories of the planets he had visited, of dangers he had faced, and of hope he believed in. The dragon baby would stir slightly, almost like it listened. Kale found himself speaking longer and longer, as if sharing words could make the world less cold, less lonely. Over the next few days, the dragon began to move more boldly. It stretched its wings, practiced tiny hops across the blankets, and even tried a weak flap. Kale encouraged it gently, clapping his hands when it succeeded. The baby let out a small, proud roar that echoed in the tiny outpost, and Kale felt a surge of pride himself. They were learning together, he was teaching it to survive, and it was teaching him patience and hope. Kale noticed a change in himself too. Before finding the dragon, life on the ice planet had been harsh and lonely. He had faced danger often, but nothing had stirred his heart like this. The dragon's trust, its small sparks of life in the frozen darkness, reminded him that even in the coldest, harshest places, life could be beautiful. He realized that courage wasn't just about surviving storms, it was about caring for someone who needed you, even when it's hard, even when no one else believes it's worth it. One evening, as the storm howled outside and the outpost shivered under its icy weight, Kale sat beside the dragon, sharing warmth from his own body. The dragon pressed its head against his arm, purring softly. Kale smiled, feeling a bond that went beyond words. He didn't know where this creature had come from or what the future held, but he knew one thing: he would protect it, teach it, and never let it feel alone again. As the night grew colder, Kale lay down near the dragon, covering it with blankets and keeping it close. Outside, the wind screamed and snow drifted like waves against the walls of the outpost, but inside, there was fire, warmth, and trust. The dragon baby blinked slowly, golden eyes half closed, its body finally relaxed. Kale whispered one last thing before sleep claimed him: "You're safe with me. Always." And for the first time since the storm began, both human and dragon slept peacefully, ready to face the challenges of the frozen world together. The sun had barely risen over the ice planet, but the storm from the previous day had not fully passed. Snow still whipped across the cliffs, and the cold bit into every exposed surface. Kale was checking the outpost's walls when he heard it, a deep, rumbling growl that echoed across the frozen plains. He froze, scanning the horizon. At first, he saw nothing. Then, through the blowing snow, he caught the dark shapes moving closer. Two massive predators, taller than a human, with jagged claws and glowing eyes, were hunting. Kale's heart pounded. The dragon baby stirred beside the blankets, tiny wings twitching nervously. It could feel the danger. Kale acted quickly. He grabbed a flare gun and fired it into the air. The red light flared across the white landscape, illuminating the predator's path. They paused, snarling, unsure. Kale took a deep breath. He knew he could not fight them alone, too big, too strong, but he had something they did not expect. The dragon baby. The small creature blinked at him, then flinched. Its trust in him was absolute, but it was still weak. Kale knelt down beside it and whispered, "It's time. We can do this. Together." The dragon blinked slowly, as if understanding. Kale carefully lifted it into his arms and stepped outside the outpost. Snow whipped around them, stinging his eyes, but he forced himself to keep moving forward. The predators advanced, claws scraping the ice. Kale stopped and turned to face them. He held the dragon baby in one arm and pointed the flare gun with the other. The predators snarled, their eyes glowing in the red light, but they hesitated. Kale could feel the dragon trembling, tiny sparks flickering from its nostrils. He spoke softly, "You can do it. Show them what we can do." The dragon hissed, a small but fierce sound, and leaped from Kale's arms. Its wings flapped awkwardly at first, but then it gained balance. A tiny burst of fire shot from its mouth, striking one predator on the leg. It howled, recoiling in surprise. Kale's heart raced with hope. The dragon had courage, more than anyone expected from such a small, fragile creature. Kale ran alongside it, dodging ice chunks and debris as the other predator lunged at him. He rolled to the side, firing the flare gun to distract it. The creature snapped, claws missing him by inches. Kale grabbed a jagged icicle from the ground, swinging it to create space, buying the dragon more time. The little dragon's fire had scared the first predator enough to slow its attack, but the second one advanced. Kale shouted, "Now!" The dragon flapped its wings and leapt, breathing fire directly at the predator. The creature shrieked, retreating for a moment. Kale took advantage of the distraction, charging forward and striking the second predator with the icicle, forcing it to stumble. The battle was chaotic. Snow swirled, wind howled, and the predators roared, but Kale and the dragon moved together. The dragon's small size allowed it to strike unexpectedly, while Kale used clever movements and his knowledge of the terrain to stay safe. Inch by inch, they forced the predators away from the outpost. Finally, after what felt like hours, the predators backed off. The first one limped away, still hissing, and the second followed, clearly impressed, or terrified, by the tiny dragon and its human companion. Kale dropped to his knees, breathing heavily, covered in snow and ice, his muscles aching. The dragon landed on the blankets, panting, its small chest heaving. Its eyes met Kale's, and he smiled through the exhaustion. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it." The dragon made a small, happy squeak, curling up against him for warmth. Kale felt a deep pride, not just in the dragon, but in himself. He had faced danger that no ordinary human could have survived alone, and together they had triumphed. The outpost was safe, at least for now. The colonists arrived later, drawn by the noise and the glow from the dragon's fire. They had doubted Kale when he first brought the creature inside, calling it dangerous and foolish. But now they stood in awe. They had watched him fight, seen the tiny dragon's courage, and realized something extraordinary. Kale had not just saved a life, he had shown them what humans were capable of. Bravery, intelligence, and compassion. One of the colonists stepped forward, shaking his head. I didn't think it could be done. That little thing, and you, incredible." Kale nodded quietly. He didn't need praise. He only cared that the dragon was safe. That night, the storm finally died down. The outpost was quiet, except for the faint crackle of the fire and the soft breathing of the dragon baby. Kale sat beside it, brushing the frost from its scales. Its tiny wings twitched as it slept, sparks flickering faintly from its nostrils. Kale whispered, "You were amazing today. Brave little one." The dragon stirred, nuzzling him softly. Kale looked out at the ice planet, knowing that more dangers would come. Storms, predators, and unknown threats waited beyond the outpost's walls. But now he felt something he had not felt before, confidence. Humans were not just survivors. They could protect, inspire, and even change the fate of other beings. Together with the dragon, he could face anything. The night stretched on, the outpost warm and safe. Kale knew the dragon was more than just a creature, it was a companion, a partner, and a symbol of hope. And he knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning. The ice planet had tested him, pushed him to his limits, and yet he had prevailed. And when humans fought for what mattered, even against impossible odds, they could succeed. As the stars twinkled above the frozen world, Kale sat with the dragon baby curled beside him, firelight reflecting in its golden eyes. He smiled, knowing that courage, trust, and heart could overcome even the harshest storms. And tomorrow, whatever came next, they would face it together. The storm had passed, leaving the ice planet bathed in a pale, frozen light. Snowflakes drifted gently, and the air was crisp and clear. Kale stood at the edge of the outpost, looking out at the white plains. The dragon baby, now slightly larger and stronger, moved beside him. Its golden eyes sparkled, and small sparks of fire flickered from its nostrils. Kale knelt, brushing the frost from its scales. "You've grown fast," he said softly. "Stronger than I imagined." The dragon nudged him gently, curling against his arm. Kale smiled. Over the past days, they had faced storms, predators, and doubt, yet both had survived. Together, they had become stronger, braver, and more confident. Yet Kale knew the dragon did not belong here. Ice planets were no place for a creature like this, and the dragon's instincts were calling it to something greater, its own kind, wherever they might be. He had protected it, healed it, and taught it to trust. Now it was time for the ultimate act of courage, letting go. He led the dragon to a high ridge overlooking the frozen valley. The wind whipped around them, strong and biting, but Kale stood firm. The dragon looked down at the white plains, then back at him, as if sensing his thoughts. Kale knelt, resting a hand on its head. "You've done amazing things," he whispered. "And now it's your turn to fly freely." The dragon made a small, soft cry, then stretched its wings. Kale watched in awe as it tested them, flapping cautiously at first. Its strength was enough now, the muscles had healed, and its fire had grown more controlled. The golden eyes met his one last time, filled with trust and gratitude. Kale's chest tightened. He had grown attached, but he knew that holding it back would be selfish. With a final nod, the dragon leapt from the ridge. The wind carried it upward, wings cutting through the cold air. Kale watched, heart pounding, as it rose higher and higher, sparks of fire flickering around its head like a small comet. It circled once, then soared toward the distant horizon. Kale felt a mix of sadness and pride. The creature he had saved was no longer a helpless baby, it was strong, free, and alive. He turned back to the outpost, where the colonists were beginning their day. They had seen the dragon in action before, but now they watched it fly away in silence, awe in their eyes. One of the older colonists, a stern man who had doubted Kale from the start, spoke quietly. "You've done something remarkable. That little creature, it would have died without you." Kale nodded, not needing more words. The truth of what had happened spoke for itself. Days passed, and life returned to a normal rhythm at the outpost. Kale continued his work, but something inside him had changed. The ice planet was still harsh, still unforgiving, but he now carried a quiet confidence. He had saved a life when no one else could, and that act of courage had left a mark, not just on the dragon, but on himself. He realized that humans were not only survivors, they were protectors, teachers, and sometimes heroes. One evening, as Kale worked repairing a generator outside, a flash of gold appeared in the sky. The dragon had returned, flying low, wings powerful and steady. It circled the outpost, letting out a small, joyful roar, then disappeared again into the horizon. Kale smiled. It had come back to acknowledge him, a silent promise that their bond would never break. That night, Kale sat by the fire, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about the storm, the predators, the long hours of care, and the moments when he had doubted himself. But more than that, he thought about the dragon, the way it had trusted him, followed him, and even fought alongside him. Kale realized that courage was not only about fighting enemies, it was about protecting life, showing compassion, and believing that even the smallest act could make a difference. The dragon had changed him. It had shown him the strength that comes from caring, the bravery in vulnerability, and the hope that exists even in the coldest, most unforgiving places. Kale knew that wherever the dragon went, it would carry his lessons, his care, and a piece of human courage with it. And he would carry its memory, a reminder that even in a vast, harsh universe, humans could make a difference. In the following weeks, Kale became known across the colony as a hero, not for fighting alone or defeating enemies, but for showing a heart bigger than fear, a courage bigger than the storm, and a wisdom beyond survival. The story of the dragon baby spread, inspiring others to care, to act, and to believe that humans could rise above the cold and dangerous world around them. Kale often looked at the horizon, imagining the dragon soaring freely. He whispered to the wind, "Fly high, little one. You're free now, but I'll never forget you." And somewhere in the distance, sparks of golden fire danced across the ice, a silent answer. The ice planet remained cold and harsh, storms still swept across the plains, and predators still roamed the cliffs. But in one small outpost, a human had shown that courage, compassion, and determination could change the fate of a life, and sometimes, even the fate of an entire world. Kale sat by the fire, the quiet night wrapping around him like a blanket. He smiled, thinking of the dragon baby, now grown, strong, and free. He knew that the universe was full of challenges, but he also knew that humans, ordinary, courageous humans, could rise to meet them. And that thought gave him warmth, hope, and the strength to face whatever came next.